The second point that I want to make is what I will call delayed doubt. And so they went from, they came down to Troas, and there they got the vision. Paul got this vision about a man from Macedonia, and they went across to Samothrace, and then they went to Macedonia. The first city that they encounter in Macedonia is this big city called Philippi. And they get there, Paul, Silas, and Timothy get there, and the first encounter they have this meeting, and a group of people become believers, and one of them is a very rich female who happens to be the very first European convert of the gospel, Lydia. And she invites them to their home, and they have a good time of fellowship, and probably Silas turns to Paul and says, "Man, that was a great vision you had. That was great guidance you had. Strong work." But that's not how the chapter ends, is it? Because before the chapter is done, they are beaten and in chains and in a dungeon. What do they think then? What would we think then? What would we think if we walked through an open door that God provided and you found yourself beaten and in a dungeon? Many times we question the will of God when we run into obstacles. Right? We assume that if we follow God's will, the path is going to be nice and clear and smooth, and we just go gliding along. But that is not true. There is nowhere in Scripture, either from example or from statement, where it says that if you follow God's will, everything is going to be smooth. There will always be obstacles. And that is why we cannot use obstacles to determine the will of God. We can't use obstacles. Either the presence or the absence of them. You can't use obstacles to determine the will of God. Why do we think this? Why do we think that an obstacle is contrary to the will of God? One of the reasons, there may be other reasons, but one of the reasons is that one of the markers we use to identify the will of God, among other things, one of the markers to say, okay, this is the will of God, is our comfort. We put our comfort up there as one of the things that we use to identify whether something is God's will or not. Yes, there is our holiness, God's glory, the word, the commands, the examples, the illustrations from Scripture, but somewhere in there we squeeze in our comfort. And we use that as one of the markers to see if this is God's will or not, whatever we are looking to find out about God's will. I have a friend who is a missionary in Ukraine, and I got an email from him 2 days ago, and he said that the Ukrainian church has been sending a lot of missionaries to southern Russia, to the 40 people groups of southern Russia. But since 2014, when they annexed Crimea, that has completely dried up. And so he said it is more a spiritual battle than it is a physical battle. So for those churches in Ukraine that were following God's will and sending missionaries to Russia, do they have comfort now? God's will comes with obstacles, and there's no way around it. And we shouldn't doubt His will when those obstacles come.